Hi, welcome to Overthinking Entrepreneur. I'm Megan, and I've had a successful online business for a few years now, and I think I overthought probably about 90% of my decisions along the way. Honestly, I just overthought whether I should say 90% or pretty much every decision in this intro. So if you find that relatable, you are definitely in the right place. In this podcast, I will help you get out of overthinking and into action so that your online business can finally start growing. Hello from the land of painting and complete disarray in my home. We have decided to finally paint all of the trim in our house, and it has been chaotic and a lot of hard work and, a lot of not so fun parts, but it's also been kind of fun at the same time. Mainly, I'm really excited to just get this project done. We moved into our house almost 3 years ago now, which feels crazy. And in the very beginning, we painted pretty much every wall in this house. So we purchased this home from an older couple. And you could tell a lot of the decor was kind of like a funeral home when we came to view the house, but we saw so much potential in it and so much that we wanted to change. But the house was extremely beige when we moved in. Like everything was beige. And then every piece of wood in the house, there is a ton of it. There is so much trim in this house. And every piece of it is that oak with that like orangey finish. I can never remember. There's a word for it, but I am not a fan. And then just also, all of the fixtures in the house are this like very shiny gold. It's very interesting decor choices. Now, I don't want to be too critical because they made our backyard absolutely incredible. I am so grateful for everything that they did. The beautiful landscaping in our backyard and all the inside stuff has been fixable, but it wasn't our personal style. So we spent the first probably 2 weeks that we moved in painting almost every single wall in this house. And a lot of people kept telling us, like, you can slow down. You're going to be here a while. You don't have to do it all right away. And we were like, no. Right now we have the excitement. We have the momentum. We have the motivation. We want to do it. And we just knew that if we didn't do it right away, it was going to be years before it got done. Well, fast forward, right? We did get all of that painting done. And then we had intentions of eventually changing all the trim. And we thought that might be a project that we did a little more slowly at a time. And so we ended up buying all the supplies to do all the trim when I was pregnant. And we didn't realize till we got home how awful the fumes were from the primer that we used to paint the trim. And so it was sort of like, I probably shouldn't while I'm pregnant. And then we never wanted the fumes to be around our son. And so, next thing you know, he's 2 years old and no more trim has been painted. We did the trim in his bedroom before he was born, or Zach did. That was one nice time where I didn't have to help because I was pregnant. So he did all the work. But other than that, all of the supplies have just been sitting in our garage all of this time and no progress has been made. So he has some time off work this week and we're like, you know what? Let's do that trim. Let's just tackle it. It was sort of we kind of talked about it, like maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. And then we sort of kind of impulsively decided to do it. I didn't even really take any good before photos. We just got so right to work that I was like, wait, I didn't take before photos. We have some, but I would have taken like good before photos if I had thought, but we were just excited and ran with it. So anyway, we started doing that. My parents took our son for the night so that we could do the most of the primer inside and kind of get all that fumey part over with. But we are still in the thick of, we're finally almost done. Today should be the last day with a lot of painting involved. And then we'll slowly be able to start pulling it all back together. But it's been a process. There's part of me that enjoys this kind of hard work. And I don't know, my husband and I have always had kind of fun doing this together, just like hanging out, listening to music, watching TV shows, like working on this together. And we both can like really get into that like hyperdrive mode and just go hard on a project. We did the same thing with our yard a few weeks ago. I always have intentions to be that person that does 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. That is just not really how I roll. Instead, we wait and wait and wait. And then we do the whole thing in a week. That's just, I don't know why we're like that. Are you like that or is it just us? But so anyway, there's some backstory to this podcast episode. So we have been painting the trim. We're painting it white, by the way. Getting rid of all of that like orangey finish and the white. It's brightening up. Things look so nice. I'm sure I'll post some pictures on Facebook and maybe send a few out an email or something if you want to see. But it already looks so good in the places where it's done. And now we're just so excited to have all of it done. So anyway, that's what we've been doing. It's been worth it. It's a long, tedious project. Not fun, but we are excited to have it done. But I was trying to decide what to talk about on the podcast, and I had really been thinking, just my brain just connects almost everything to business these days. Not in a sense that like I can't relax, but my brain will often wander and like make these little connections to how other things are similar to business. And so I've been spending a lot of time painting and my brain was sort of making some connections around how painting can be similar to business. And I thought that this might be a fun little episode to share with you. So there really is some good stuff in here, I promise. Okay, this isn't just like you don't have to turn this off now and say, okay, I don't know what she's doing. That's enough. Like there's some actual good business lessons here, I promise. And you might be surprised how many different ways I found to connect it. And I'm sure if I kept going, I could come up with more, but I wanted this to be a somewhat short and sweet episode. So the first thing is harness that motivation when you have it. Like I just told you, I had a lot of people who were like, you don't have to do all that painting. You can wait. And we were like, no, we know that if we try and do it a little at a time, it's not going to happen. And lo and behold, that's what happened. Right? So I think you have to know yourself. Not everyone is like me. Many of you probably do slow and steady on projects really well instead of putting it off and then full speed ahead for 3 days and then you're just exhausted. But that's not how I tend to roll on this sort of stuff. So when you have that motivation, when you feel like working on a project, like the past 2 nights, I was up until 3:30 in the morning painting. Now, I am not happy that I was up that late. I am very tired and I'm making sure I go to bed earlier tonight. But I got so much done during those times. I have a 2-year-old. It's pretty hard to paint with a 2-year-old around. So a lot of the painting, we tried to do as much when he was with my parents, but now that he's back home, we've been doing it when he's in bed, fume reasons and to just keep him out of it. And so running with that motivation when you have it. I think that you never want to rely on motivation to be the thing that helps you get where you want to go in your business because motivation comes and goes. It's fleeting. It can sometimes feel unpredictable. I think the longer you're in business and the more you get to know yourself, the more you can kind of predict and help yourself get into that motivated state. But to an extent, it's something that comes and goes. There are days when I have a lot to do and I cannot get motivated no matter what. So when you are feeling that motivation for your business, run with it within reason, of course, right? Don't let it take over your life. But when you're feeling that motivation to do something, do it. And I have struggled with this one in the past because I think I've told you guys how I will sometimes like squirrel around my to-do list and I kind of call it the productive squirrel. And so it's kind of the same concept. Like there have been times where I say to myself, well, I don't know, I have this thing here that I really meant to get done today. I think this is what I should be doing. But it's like dragging myself through quicksand trying to work on it. And there's something else on my to-do list that doesn't need done today, is more of a long-term thing that needs done, but has been on my to-do list for a long time. And if I'm feeling motivation to do that, unless like the main thing I'm trying to work on is super time sensitive and has to be done right now, flip to what you're feeling motivated on. Run with the things that you're excited to work on when you're excited to work on them, because you're always going to get faster, easier results when you harness that motivation and run with it. The next way that business is similar to painting, the more work that you put in up front, the better your results are going to be. So, are you someone who freehands your painting or are you a taper? I'm a taper. I will freehand occasionally. My husband has a steadier hand than me. I do not. Like whenever we would have to dissect something in high school or even in college, I took a lot of, I was a pharmacy major if you didn't know that. So I've taken a lot of science classes and I've had to dissect some things, which I do not enjoy whatsoever. But I cannot tell you how many times the teacher would be like part of the assignment would be to identify the different organs or whatever we're supposed to be finding. And there was times where I couldn't find it and they'd be like, well, yours should have been right here, but you sort of cut it in half. Or you kind of like, oh, I just do not have that kind of nimble and steady hand that it takes for that kind of precision work. And I know that about myself. So I don't really try and freehand. I will put up tape. And I know it takes so much time to put up tape. I hate it. And especially with this project, I put up tape for 5 hours straight and then we did all the primer and then we had to pull down the tape and then retape and do the paint. And like, it's awful. It's not fun. But for me, I know that if I try and freehand it, I'm going to make so many mistakes and it's going to bother me forever. And it might not bother you, depending on your personality, if you have that perfectionist streak or not. But for me, if I willingly kind of did a half-assed job on the project and didn't feel like putting up the tape and was like, I'm just going to do it. I know I'm not very good at this, but I'm just going to do it. Whatever. I just want to get it done. For the rest of the time that we're in this home, which we're planning to be a pretty long time, we really love this home, I would notice those mistakes and it would bother me every time that I saw it. I know that that's the case. And so I don't want sloppy paint in my home for the rest of my life. Now, an occasional mistake, it's fine. It's not a big deal. It happens. But for me, I knew that I would be much happier with the ultimate results if I put in the work to put up the tape. And I don't just slap up the tape and call it done. I spend time making sure, because the more precise the tape is, first of all, the faster and easier the painting is going to be, but also the better the painting is going to look when you're done. It takes a long time to put up the tape, but then it takes like a quarter of the time putting up the tape to do the paint, and then the paint looks great and it's done. And so for me, that is the way that I tend to go about painting. It depends what you're painting, but for most things, that's what I tend to do. And I think business is really the same way. So many people want to skip the tape. They want to skip the tape part. They don't want to figure out their ideal client. They don't want to understand marketing. They don't want to learn how to take photos. They don't want to learn to write. They don't want to get comfortable on camera. They want to just skip right to the sales. They want to just get to it. And they try and skip all of this foundational upfront work that is really important. And at first you can. For most businesses, it depends what you do, of course, but most of the time, when you first get started, you might be selling to your friends and family or people you already know, and you can get away with not doing that stuff. But as you try and expand out of the people that you already know and you want strangers online to buy from you, you have to go back and put up the tape. You just have to, okay? Because you're going to feel frustrated and you're going to say, I have been doing this for a year. Why am I not seeing results? And it's probably because you didn't put up the tape. You didn't start and put in all of that work up front to help figure out, because when you do that, when you know who your ideal client is and you know your brand and you know the value that you want to offer them, and you sit down and you figure out all of this stuff and it's an ongoing process. I don't want to make it sound like you sit down and you just work on it and then it's perfect and then it's ongoing and it's something that you'll do alongside of working your business. But a lot of times people get very frustrated that they're not seeing the results and they feel like they're working so hard, but it's because they're kind of freehanding it in a sloppy way and it's showing in their results. They've got paint all over the walls that they didn't mean to paint because they didn't put up the tape, right? You're all over the place and it's all sloppy and you're not happy with the results that you're getting, and it's because you didn't put in that time up front. So if you're feeling that way right now, if you're feeling like the results are not what you wanted them to be, and you feel like everything feels hard, sometimes it's time to go back to the beginning. And even if you're not in the beginning of your business, sometimes it's still time to go back to the beginning. A lot of times, if you are years into your business, like a year or more into your business, and everything feels hard and overwhelming and stressful and confusing and all of those things, a lot of times what you need to do is go back to the beginning. Go back to the basics and either get back to what you were doing in the beginning that you probably didn't even realize that you stopped doing, or it's time to go back and actually put up the tape. Sorry, I keep saying that, but it's the simplest way to kind of encompass everything that I mean here, right? It's time to go back and put up that tape and really nail down, who am I looking for? What do I want my social media to be about? What are my goals here? What is my plan to attract new followers? How am I going to convert those people to my customers? If you can't answer these questions and then you're wondering why it's not happening, well, you haven't done that foundational stuff up front. You haven't figured that out. And me or other coaches, mentors, people out there, we can help you refine and we can guide you and we can help you understand what needs figured out and how to get started. But ultimately, this stuff has to come from you. No one else can tell you who your ideal client is, what your brand should be, any of that kind of stuff. And so if you've been resisting it, it's time to go back and put up the tape. And then you're going to be able to paint really fast and it's going to look awesome. Okay? Next thing, it's going to take longer than you think it is. It just is, okay? The amount of times that we're like, okay, I'm just going to do this tape and then I'll be able to go. Like yesterday, I told my parents about what time I thought I would be getting there to pick my son up. It was longer because I was trying to help. We lucked out. We got so lucky with the most amazing, cool day with no humidity. The first day we started painting, it was so humid that it really felt like if it got just 1% more humid, we might just be underwater. It was awful. So yesterday we got so lucky that it was really cool, no humidity, and we were easily able to pop out all the windows and paint those. And so I was trying to help get those taped up and ready for painting because he was going to stay home and paint while I went to pick up our son. And I gave my mom my best guess of what time I thought I would be there. And I wasn't wildly off. I said between 4 and 5, and I got there at 5. So I wasn't like crazy, but still, it took longer than I thought that it would. It just does. The project is always going to take longer than you thought that it would. And my husband was like, I think I'll have this and this and this done when you guys get back. Nope, he was still doing windows when I got back because the windows were a humongous pain in the butt. And it's just always going to take longer than you think that it is, okay? It's true of painting, like pretty much any home improvement project. I don't know if I know a single person who's like, yeah, my home improvement project was done completely on schedule or even early. It always takes longer, right? There's always something. And I think business is the same way. There's really no way to predict when your business is going to take off. There are things that you can do to help make it go faster, but to an extent, you're not in control of all the things that affect when you start to see that success in your business. So make peace right now with the fact that it's probably going to take longer than you think that it is to get to the end, to get to the results, to get to where you want to be. I used to tell people, give it a year before you start to really see results. And I still think that can be true, but I think it's trending closer to 2 years now because there's so many creators out there. And especially if you haven't put up the tape, right? Like I think that it still can be closer to 6 months to a year if you do it right and you really hit the ground running. But a lot of times it takes longer to really pick up steam these days, depending on the ways that you're trying to grow your business. And sometimes you make a change and you expect it to just fix everything overnight and it doesn't. And that can feel frustrating too. So promoting, it's going to take longer than you think. Seeing the growth that you want, it's going to take longer than you think. Creating that new website, it's going to take longer than you think. No matter what it is, just accept the fact that it's probably going to take longer than you think that it is. And that's okay. Next thing, when you are going through the project, when you're working, sometimes you might mess up something that you thought was already done and you have to go back and tweak a little bit. So even with all of our careful taping, when you're painting at 3 a.m. and you're exhausted, you start to get a little sloppy. So there are a few spots on our walls that we painted 2 years ago that now accidentally have white paint on them. And we're going to have to pull out the cans. We saved the cans, so don't worry. We'll be able to touch it all up and get it how we want it. But we thought that, in theory, that painting the living room walls, for example, was completed. Now it's not. Now it's got a few white spots that we need to fix and we need to go back and do that. And so sometimes your business can feel the same way. Sometimes when you're working on one thing, you realize that you need to go back and change something else. Sometimes you work through a fear and you think you're good, and then you try something new and you have to work through that fear all over again. So let me give you an example. I had to work through a lot of fear of putting myself out there in the beginning of my business. It's funny now because within the places that I'm used to showing up, I don't have too much fear. I can go live, I can do a reel, I can post a photo of myself looking awful. Like there's not a lot of things that scare me in that sense. But in the beginning, they really did. I had to work through that fear of putting myself out there. And it was very hard, but I was able to do it. And I thought that I had conquered it in a sense. And then when I started thinking about putting myself out there in a different way, that same fear came back in a new way. So it's something that I thought was already done, but here it is back. And I got to work through it again and in a different way. So when I thought about trying Facebook ads for the first time, I was petrified. People leave insanely rude comments on Facebook ads. They just do. So I was like, oh my gosh, what if some person leaves a mean comment? What am I going to do? It was scary to think about putting myself out there in that way. Anytime that I think about trying something new, it's kind of a new version of that same fear that I thought I'd already worked through and was done with, and here it comes back again. So just know sometimes you think you're done with something and you've worked through it, and then whoops, it's back and you're working through it again. And that's okay and that's normal. And it's just part of business and part of personal growth along the way. And then the last lesson that I think you can learn from my painting project is that it's going to be worth it. It looks so good. It's not even done. I cannot wait. Today should be our last big bulk painting day. And then we still have a few more things that we want to do, but I'm so excited. And the spots that are already done look so good. So much better. It's like we're in the phase of the project right now, like the best part of the project where you walk around and all you can say to each other is, oh my God, it looks so good. Wow, look at that. Oh, I'm so glad we did this. We're in that phase of the project right now. So business is the same way. It's going to be worth it. All the hard work, all the stress, all of those. I know that in this particular time of year that I'm recording this right now, many of you are really kind of struggling in your business right now for a lot of different reasons. And that's not what this episode is about. I'll probably talk about that soon. But I just want you to know that holding on, pushing through, it's going to be worth it. And the thing that is really annoying but true is that the harder it is to get there, the more worth it might feel at the end. So an example of this, we probably could have hired someone to do all of this painting. I didn't necessarily want to do that. We talked about hiring someone just to do the staircase because it was a huge pain. And then my husband was like, you know what? I think I'm going to tackle that. And I'm glad he did because he did great. But we could have paid to have someone do it. But the satisfaction of the project would have been nowhere near the same if someone else had done it for us. The fact that we are putting in the work and doing this ourselves, yes, it's a pain. Yes, it's taking up a lot of our time. Yes, we are covered in paint and our 2-year-old can't stop pointing at the paint and being upset and thinking we have boo-boos. And yes, we are tired and my back hurts and, I'm over it. But at the same time, when I look at the hard work that we put in and I look at what we've been able to accomplish and how different our house looks and how much we're going to be able to enjoy it now for years to come because of this hard work that we're putting in, it makes it feel really worth it. And for the record, I'm not knocking you. If you're not into painting and you would rather pay someone, and if you have paid someone to come paint your house, more power to you. I am not. I do not mean to make it sound like I'm judging you if you make that decision. I think there's just different personalities out there, and there's certain jobs I'd be willing to pay for, but something like this that we can pretty easily, like, it sucks, but we can do it. It's not out of our wheelhouse. It just isn't fun to do. We're typically willing to do that ourselves because we're cheap. But anyway, I think that if we had, for example, gone away for the weekend, hired some people to do all of this and came home and it was done, we would have that great moment of walking in and going, wow, because it would have been a total shock. We wouldn't have seen it as a work in progress, but we wouldn't have had that same sense of pride for probably years to come. I mean, I'm kind of being dramatic, but not really, that I think years from now, I'll still be looking at the work that we've done over these last few days and just feeling so glad that we did it and so happy with how it turned out. And business can be the same way. And the thing about business is that it's always ongoing work. I don't like when people talk about like passive income or residual income in the sense that like, oh, you just work a little bit and then you never have to do anything again. Most people that are trying to tell you about that, that's not really how it works. Well, and the other thing is like, why would they still be trying to get you to buy their thing if the money was just rolling in on its own without them having to do anything, right? So I'm not the biggest fan of the terms passive and residual income because I just don't think that's the reality of what's really going on there. But I think that if you put in a lot of hard work early on in your business and you put up the tape and you put in that hard work, that for the next few years, you can be looking at what you've done and feel so proud of yourself, so grateful to yourself that you worked so hard, and so happy for just the business that you've built and the way that it can change your life if you let it. But you have to find that motivation. You have to put in that work up front, put up the tape. You have to be willing for it to take longer than you think that it's going to. You have to understand that in the process, probably something that you already thought was done is going to get messed up again and need redone. But it's all going to be worth it at the end of the day. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of a silly analogy, but I thought there was actually some really good lessons there that can be applied to your business. So I hope that you enjoyed this. And I would love for you to know, send me a message on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you want to tell me, do you put up tape when you paint or do you freehand it? I'm so curious now. Okay, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next week. I hope this episode inspires you to go take action on something you have been overthinking. As much as I wish you could, you cannot think your way to success, so promise me you're going to go take some action today. Head over to overthinkingentrepreneur.com to find all the cool stuff I've made for you over the years, like my free guide to getting more social media engagement and my Facebook group, Dynamite Entrepreneurs, which has a free course on social media basics.